Welcome to Romero Threads on YouTube, where it's all about embroidery. In today's video, this is episode number 3 in our 10-part series, Understanding Embroidery. We are diving deep in the digitizing side of embroidery. And really my goal for this 10-part series is for digitizing embroidery, the whole process, for it to all make sense. And of course, the best way for everything to make sense is to see actual stitch outs. So before we see the actual stitch outs, let's get into the software here. And I'm creating 4 different versions of this stitch out. And what I want to show here, so let me show you this first one here. So I'm going to change it to this burgundy. So the first M, the spacing, the density is 2 millimeters. So you can see how spaced out it is. The second one here, 1 millimeter. This one 0.7, and then this final one 0.40. This first round, this is with no underlay. Okay, so we do want to see what is the difference between having underlay, not having underlay. And you can see how I have this blue running stitch going all around. Eventually, once I have everything ready to go, I'll just easily turn it into a sand stitch. But for right now, I'm just focused on structure. I'm trying to see how much structure my fill stitch has. So I send it to the machine.
Gets cold, let's turn up the heat, yeah. With every beat we feel the night could be surreal.
And then I have a second version here where I add underlay. So this will be 2, 1 millimeter, 0.7, and then your regular. This one here, this last one, this is like template settings right here. This is my density of 0.40 and my underlay, which has the tatami and the edge run, just like we talked about in episode 2. I'm gonna let this run real quick, and then we're gonna super zoom in and see what's happening with these stitches here.
Gets cold, let's turn up the heat, yeah. With every beat we feel the night could be surreal.
Let's get started with analyzing our stitch out. And this is round number 1. So this is the round without any underlay. And this is just a quick view of how it looks with our underlay. Let's start with this one here first, okay? This is without the underlay. Now, real quick, you see this, we have our walking stitches here, which is visible. Let's say we don't want that, right? We want like a clean view without having all these extra walking stitches or this double overlap here. Here on Wilcom, that's easy day right there, right? Let's say we want to remove all these walking stitches. We want it to look super clean. What we're going to do, we're going to select this. And of course, we have this powerful setting here. Is called the trapunto. It says force underlying travel runs to the edges of selected objects used with open stitching. It says, so right here we have open stitching. As soon as I click it, all these walking stitches are going to disappear. Bam, look at that. Clean. Now the only drawback with this, okay, and really if you have your densities open like this, it's not much of a problem. But all what happened here is my stitch count went up a tad bit. So right now with the trapunto, it has 1146 stitches, 1146. And then if I go back to where it was, 1029. So that is a difference of about 100 120, 120 something. Here, not a big of a problem. I did keep it here because I want to see the underlay here. Okay, but in real world situations, you could do a design with a very light stitch and put the trapunto, and it's gonna look very clean. This one here is the first round, so this is the 2mm density. We're very spaced out, but what I want to highlight here, you can see how these stitches, they go from side to side, so we don't have any gaps. My stitches, when it's going from side to side, it's hitting that green outline perfectly. We don't really worry about push pull right here. It's perfectly done. Here in the software, in a perfect world, we're gonna have this blue outline covering our fill stitch perfectly, right? So right now, since we're not heavy on our stitches right now, these stitches are actually touching the border, all right? From all the sides, we're touching the border here. So let's check it out. So you can see how that yellow and that green, my outline, they're kind of touching perfectly, right? We're not really worried about push pull situation here. Okay, so like right here, this is the big sample right here. So let's see right here, right? Bam, it's connecting each other, right? And slowly, as we start adding stitches, you're gonna see how this connection is gonna start opening up. Okay, so right here, we're all good. We got it good. Then I move to the right, make it a tad bit more dense. 1mm, we're still opened. We're still open. Let's go here. Here, you can start seeing how we're starting to get that gap right here. It's slowly opening up. And when we talk about the push-pull, a lot of times it's the pull that we're kind of worried about, right? Because when we have that pull, we start getting gaps right here. You can still see my walking stitches kind of here. This is no underlay right now. Stitch wise, right? Very minimum. We're at 1,000 and about 1,900 stitches on the 1mm. Now we're at 0.7 here. You can kind of see how we're kind of slowly gapping now, but looks pretty clean. Slowly we're starting to see these walking stitches that were down below. They're slowly disappearing. They're still there, but you could kind of see how we're slowly losing that black part on the bottom. But we are slowly also opening up our pull, and then we're starting to get some push down here in this corner. So push pull, the push is when you're spilling outside of the boundary, and then the pull is when you're starting to gap inside the boundary. I purposely used a black background just so we could see that contrast. And then we go here to the 0.40, which is usually standard density for fill stitches. But one thing that I want to highlight here, all right, here we can see that push pull. That pull, we have this big gap right here now. This is a massive pulling that we have here. Especially we don't have any underlay, so this gap is gonna be even bigger than normal. Then here we're outside the border. This is our push, so our threads are pushing outside of the border here, and here it's pulling within the border, so we're getting gaps. And I'm gonna show you in a bit how to go about mitigating. But of course, the first step that I always say to mitigate gaps is add underlay. Let's start going to our stitches with underlay. This is our 2mm with underlay. So now you can see our stitch count slowly going up. So really it just looks like crisscross. Here you can see how there's no push pull. Everything is pretty much squared up perfectly. Everything looks clean. We don't have anything out of the ordinary. Probably something that I wouldn't stitch out, but it's good to see how something looks like. Now let's look at the 1mm. Now the 1mm, you could kind of see how the black, we're losing a lot of the black on the background. Our walking stitches that are down below, they're kind of just blending in with all of our stitches. But it's not too bad for 1mm, because 1mm, of density, you're pretty opened up. But you could kind of see how we're kind of closing up the background. We are introducing pool here. Kind of see how we're gapping now. Slight gap. And that's something that we're always tackling, is the push-pull. And we're going to go in and we're going to adjust our push-pull once we analyze our stitches. Now let's look at our 0.7 millimeters. So this is 0.7 now. It's starting to come together. Our shape looks pretty straight. I'm going to say that it looks pretty straight. Our walking stitches that are down below, they kind of disappeared already. And then you could kind of see this overlap that was super visible before, but now we're kind of slowly losing it. 0.7 millimeters, I would say, is still pretty open spacing. So it's not too dense. There's sometimes files where you don't want it too dense. Here, it's not too bad, but you can see how straight this M is looking. Okay, so we're looking pretty good. And now let's look at our final one. So this, I would say, is standard setting right here. This is 0.4, let's see, 0.4 millimeters with underlay, 5,200 stitches. Usually I would say 99% of the time, if you're doing a design, look at your design, most likely it has this setting right here. It has a 0.4 millimeter density for your tatami stitch with a tatami underlay. So everything looks squared up. So you can see how this line, my lines are looking super straight. I got some push here. You can kind of see how I'm spilling outside of the line, and we're gonna fix all that. Okay, but other than that, we gotta kind of see where am I getting my push pull. So here, a tiny gap here. Of course, your gaps, your push pull, that is related to your stitch angle. Because so you can see my stitch angle here is at a 15 degrees. So we're gonna pull at that degree right here. So you can see this line is gonna have a tad bit. Okay. Then here is my major gap here. So if we go back to the drawing board, we're going to have to adjust this piece. And this is kind of where you start creating an eye and start getting a feel. We're going to start recognizing what's the distance between this and this. After experience and just trial and error, I might say this is probably like a good 0.2 millimeters of a distance here. So we're going to fix that. Then here you can see I have a gap right here too. All right, this is all push pull, and the major factor is the stitch angle. We're starting to look squared up. Here with this setting, you can't really see the background anymore. Our run stitches totally disappear, and that double stitch that we had running across here diagonal definitely disappeared. This one right here is your template setting. Let's say we didn't have this black background. Let's say we had a little lighter background. Let's say we had a white background. We can probably get away with less density. Maybe we could go with 0.42. 4.3. So let's see what's the difference of stitch count if we go ahead and get a little less. So if we go here, okay, we're at 52,000 or 5,200 stitches. But let's say we're gonna do a minor change and we're gonna put 4.2 stitches, 0.42 millimeters of density. So we're at 5208. So that's a difference of about 200 stitches right there, by just changing that. And if we got a lighter background, we're not going to have that dark black background kind of sticking out, right? So we can get away by making it less dense. So your background can play also a major role on how dense you need that file. Let's talk about how we're going to take care of this push-pull situation, right? So where we had gapping was here. In a perfect world, this is how it looked. Let's change this color here. How would we fix this area here? So we already added underlay. We don't have to add any more underlay. We already have the correct density. So I just have it running down this line right here. Easy fix here. H is my redraw, and I'm gonna select this node and this node, right? So I select them by pushing control. I'm just gonna hit the arrow key. I'm not dragging. I'm not trying to do anything crazy. I'm just gonna push the arrow key to the right. Bam, look at that. On the software, it looks like I made a mistake, right? Because I'm going too far from this line. The stitch out is dictating how much I have to pull. So if I'm pulling out, it's gonna compensate there. All right, so we're good there. Where else do I have to fix? So this is a common one here. So you see here where I have spillage. This is where I started also. And then I have a gap here too. What can be done here, instead of having this pointy corner here, we can, bam, corner this off like this. Delete this corner. Delete. We could just put it like this. And what I could also do, this is just extra what I like to do. This circle here is where my needle is going to first drop. But I don't want it to drop here in this corner. I'm going to create a run stitch. What I'm going to do, I'm going to create a run stitch that goes from here to here. And let's put that, bam. All right, so instead of doing the tie-in here in this corner, I'm going to have it here where it's just going to run, tie in, and then start the stitch right here. So this is going to have a little push here. It's starting to look all weird, right? It's starting to look like, hey, why are you doing it like this? Once we stitch it out, it all makes sense. Here also, we could turn this line here, bam, bam, delete this one, right? Because you want it to make it like the angle, the 15-degree angle. All right, bam, bam. These corners is really where you get the spillage. Wherever that 15-degree is pushing out. And this is what's called manually adjusting your push-pull. We could just come in here and go to the pull comp setting here. Sometimes this is the easy fix. You could, instead of 0.17, which is standard, usually you should be good with that. But the bigger your fill is, the more push-pull you're going to have. All right, but usually you could go in 3.5 and then it expands it a bit. All right, but here, since we did a sample stitch out, we can go in and be super selective of exactly where do we want to do our push-pull. The good thing about doing a sample is here we could really fine-tune our push-pull and see exactly where do we need to add extra nodes or start pulling nodes. That's pretty much it. You don't have to be like 100% perfect because we're going to put a sand stitch right on top of this. So it doesn't have to be 100%, but you at least want it at least 95-90% good. So I think this file here, bam, let's turn this into a sand stitch. Bam, let's see what's the size of this. 3 millimeters. All right, that looks good. Okay, in the next episode, what I'm going to do, I'm going to stitch this on a hat, 3D puff. So if we go 3D puff, spacing, put 1/8, and take away, push enter, take away the underlay, no underlay, bam, bam. We're looking at 9,900 stitches. It's a pretty nice design. This is going to be a good size fitted design. On the next episode, I'm going to stitch this out on a hat. And then we're going to go into the more advanced details. This is episode number 3. We started pretty basic. And we're slowly going to go into the more advanced topics of embroidery. All right. I want to thank you for stopping by. I'll see you in the next one in episode number 4. Peace.